I think Pakistan's core economic challenge right now is the fact that we haven't been able to experience significant economic growth. And whereas, we are told every day that the economy has stabilized, and indeed it has stabilized if you compare it to 3 years ago, but this is not enough because Pakistan has a very young population. Our median age is less than 21 years, which means that almost 120, 130 million people are below the age of 21. Now, these people, these young people require jobs, which can only come about if there is significant economic growth in the economy, which is something that this administration, this government has not been able to achieve despite tall claims to the contrary. Pakistan's economy goes through a very classic boom and bust cycle. Every few years, when the economy stabilizes, then this huge current account deficit springs up, which forces us towards an exchange rate correction, then makes everything more expensive, and the cycle then simply repeats again. I think where this stabilization is more stable compared to previous stabilization, again, but we don't have the kind of buffers that a country or an economy is going to need in the shape of foreign exchange reserves or what have you, to withstand another pernicious and severe economic crisis, something that originated very recently from the Middle East crisis. So I think where this is a stabilization, it has not produced economic growth, which is really required for our massive young population. And at the same time, this stabilization is not deep enough because it has not built the kind of buffers an economy requires to withstand future crises or shocks. This is basically going to be a compliance budget. We are basically complying with various conditions that the IMF has put in front of us, and we'll talk about those conditions in just a little bit. But yes, this is going to be a compliance budget. I don't see this government addressing main structural problems that this economy faces. Now, we are not even talking about privatization or what have you. I'm basically talking about the massive burden of taxes that our salaried class in particular is now facing. I mean, now there is an emerging consensus in Pakistan that says that our salaried class requires relief because people are now being forced to make choices between either buying something to eat or between paying their utility bill. So I think that is a very, very big issue that needs to be addressed. There are some sounds coming from Islamabad that this is going to be addressed in the upcoming budget. I certainly hope so, for the sake of our very rapidly disappearing middle class, which is now drowning under the weight of these massive taxes. So this is going to be a compliance budget. I don't see the Ministry of Finance or the government of Pakistan addressing core structural issues. And I think one very big issue that has now come to the foreground is the massive shortfall in taxes that has emerged this year in the shape of 800 billion rupees worth of uncollected taxes or taxes that the FBR has not been able to collect. Now, I certainly expect this government to show responsibility and to impose accountability where it's due for this massive shortfall. I think in terms of economic growth, the first thing, so you basically asked, short-term measures. The first thing that needs to be done from the Ministry of Finance is to provide relief to the salary classes so that instead of their incomes going towards narrowing the fiscal deficit, they have more disposable income, and then they can subsequently spend this money. They can put this money back into the economy, which then is going to provide a sort of a monetary stimulus, if you will, to the economy. So that's one way in which you can increase growth in the short term. The second way in which you can increase growth in the short term, now again, I'm stressing the fact that these are very short-term measures because you've asked me to identify short-term measures. The second thing that could be done is to increase Benazir Income Support stipends. Poor people in general spend a much greater portion of their incomes as expenditure. So the more you give them, a bigger portion of that is going to get recirculated into the economy, again creating some kind of a monetary stimulus, thereby creating some economic growth. And I think finally, what needs to be done is to lessen the burden. I mean, I've already talked about lessening the burden of taxes. So I think these two measures primarily, I would point out, reducing the burden of taxes on the salaried classes and increasing the Benazir Income Support Programme stipend so that that money can subsequently be recirculated rechanneled into the economy to serve as a monetary stimulus of sorts to provide some economic growth in the short term.